From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. For the first time ever, the Democratic National Convention has hosted a panel dedicated to Palestinian rights. The historic move was unveiled on the opening day of the convention. It reflects a growing grassroots push against U.S. support for Israel's war on Gaza, which many Democratic voters view as genocidal. The panel, championed by the Uncommitted National Movement, aims to spotlight the urgent need for policy change. Co-founders Leila Al-Abed and Abbas Alawiyeh applauded the DNC for the significant step, but urged further action, calling on Vice President Kamala Harris to align with their demands for an arms embargo against Israel. They argue that shifting U.S. policy could not only address human rights concerns, but also strengthen Democratic unity against Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump. Joining the panel were notable figures, including Dr. Tanya Haj Hassan, a Gaza-based pediatrician, and Hala Hijazi, a Democratic organizer affected by the war. Hassan said Harris has an opportunity to unite the party against Republican nominee Donald Trump this week by turning the page toward a human rights policy. Others who participated in the panel included Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison and former Michigan Congressman Andy Levin. He is a Jewish progressive who was unseated in the 2022 midterms by a candidate backed by the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, an influential pro-Israel lobby. On top of this effort, a roughly 60-member group called Delegates Against Genocide are planning to voice their concerns at the four-day convention.
Yeah, so I'm proud to be one of 30 uncommitted delegates who are here to represent over 740,000 uncommitted votes nationally that were votes that were cast for peace and against war and for Palestinian human rights. We're hoping that Vice President Harris will tell us what her plan is and hopefully how it will be different from what we've seen happen in the last 10 months as U.S. weapons have been used to kill civilians by the thousands, including over 16,000 Palestinian children.
I think that the party needed change. I don't feel sad about someone who has unapologetically supported a genocidal regime in Israel, who has publicly supported fascism abroad and then has said we need to defeat fascism here. I think that's hypocritical. And simultaneously, I think that Kamala Harris has shown progress on that front. So yes, I'm disappointed, and I want her to move further. I know she's more empathetic than Joe Biden. I've seen that. But those words are not enough. That needs to be followed by policy, and she can adopt that in her campaign platform and advocate for it.
My vote is not secure. I feel very comfortable saying that. I recognize, as I said, over 80% of Democrats agree with me. Everybody comes here and sees my kufiyah and they say, we support you. We support your message. And so it's now the responsibility of our elected officials, right now President Biden and Vice President Harris, to listen to all of us. Everybody here is in agreement. We don't want to continue killing babies. We don't want to continue killing women. And so we need them to listen to us.
Democratic presidential nominee and Vice President Kamala Harris is advocating for a ceasefire in Gaza, according to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Speaking at the Democratic National Convention, which began on Monday in Chicago, the progressive New York Democrat highlighted Harris's efforts to end Israel's ongoing assaults on Palestine and secure the release of prisoners. Ocasio-Cortez urged her supporters to rally behind Harris, praising her connection to the middle class. Reflecting on her own political journey, she responded to Republican criticisms of her past as a bartender with pride in her working class roots. Ocasio-Cortez also emphasized the importance of electing strong Democratic majorities to advance Harris's agenda. Her speech came on the heels of Free Palestine protests outside the convention. Demonstrators are pressing Harris and the Democratic Party to reconsider U.S. support for Israel's war on Gaza, which has killed over 40,000 Palestinians, amid accusations of genocide from the International Court of Justice. In related news, in a powerful start to the Democratic National Convention, thousands of protesters rallied at a march in Chicago, calling on Vice President Kamala Harris to end unconditional U.S. military support for Israel. They condemned Israel's ongoing war on Gaza, which has been raging for more than 10 months and killing more than 40,000 Palestinians. Speaking to Democracy Now! At the march, sociologist Iman Abdelhadi highlighted the profound impact the war is having on Palestinian Americans. She said, watching our people die every day is just offensive and insensitive. The march saw demonstrators carrying slogans like "End state violence from Chicago to Gaza" and Dem silence equals Israel's violence. Concerns had been raised over aggressive police tactics and legal threats, with Police Superintendent Larry Snelling warning protesters about arrests. City officials also clashed with organizers about the route of the march. Nonetheless, many groups, including Jewish Voice for Peace, joined the demonstration. They called for an immediate arms embargo on Israel and criticized recent statements from Kamala Harris and running mate Tim Walz's campaign, which showed reluctance to halt weapons transfers to Israel.
I'm glad that Biden stepped down, but Kamala's not a rubber stamp. She's got to show us we got to end that madness in the Middle East. We have to end it. And if there's a lot of us that are still non-committed, and she needs to know that she wants our vote. She's going to have to toe the line, you know.
The literal candidate has been coronated. Nobody voted for Kamala. And she's part of an administration that is sending weapons to Israel, that is violently murdering children, women, innocent people in Palestine.
I don't think I'm waiting for anything to hear from her. I'm waiting to see action from Kamala, and we haven't seen any action from Kamala towards ending the war in Israel. So it's really more action than words that I'm looking for, and I'm not really expecting anything from her at this time.
So we are here to tell the Democratic Party end the genocide now and arms embargo right now, like as in today. Until when they're going to keep lying to us and not listen to their constituents?
Former Republican Congressman George Santos has pleaded guilty to committing wire fraud and aggravated identity theft in a federal fraud case. Santos' sentencing hearing is set for February 2025. The guilty plea comes just weeks before he was set to stand trial on nearly 24 federal charges, including campaign fraud and corruption. Last December, he was expelled from the House of Representatives in a historic vote that saw 105 of his fellow Republicans supporting his ouster. Since his election to the House in 2022, multiple instances have emerged of Santos lying about his background, including the school he attended. He had also claimed that his mother was in the World Trade Center on the day of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. Amnesty slams the U.S. and others for violating arms trade treaty. Details after the break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Amnesty International has issued a stark warning at the Geneva Arms Trade Treaty Conference. It is accusing nations like the U.S., China, and others of brazenly flouting the treaty's regulations. Signed a decade ago, the agreement aims to control the trade of conventional weapons and prevent their use in human rights abuses. Despite more than 100 signatories, including the U.S., 27 nations have yet to ratify it, undermining its effectiveness. The U.S. has delivered major arms to at least 107 countries since 2019 and accounts for 42% of global arms transfers, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Amnesty highlights the devastating impact of unregulated arms transfers to conflict zones, particularly in Palestine, Sudan, and Burma. Amnesty reports that U.S.-made weapons have been involved in several deadly Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, resulting in significant civilian casualties. 2 such strikes using bombs manufactured by Boeing recently killed 60 civilians, including 29 children in Gaza. Meanwhile, China's arms exports have fueled violence in Sudan and Burma, worsening humanitarian crises. The Biden administration has faced criticism for not advancing the treaty's ratification, which the administration of former President Donald Trump had withdrawn from. As the conference unfolds, Amnesty and other advocacy groups are urging state parties to enforce the treaty rigorously and halt arms transfers to nations committing severe human rights violations. An Israeli airstrike on the Al-Shati refugee camp in the western part of Gaza City killed 9 people, including children, on Monday. Several people were reportedly killed in an Israeli strike on a house in the Al-Tufah neighborhood in Gaza City. Flouting a UN Security Council resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire, Israel has continued its war on Gaza, killing more than 40,000 Palestinians since last October. Israel stands accused of genocide at the International Court of Justice. Palestinian journalists in Gaza gathered in Khan Yunis on Monday to protest Israel's killing of their colleague Ibrahim Marwan Muharrab. He was killed by Israeli fire while covering a military operation in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. The total number of Palestinian members of the press killed by Israel has risen to 169 since last October, according to local authorities. Bangladesh's transitional leader Muhammad Yunus has pledged unwavering support for the more than 1 million Rohingya refugees concentrated in the country's coastal city Cox's Bazar. Addressing foreign diplomats, Yunus highlighted the critical need for international aid to sustain humanitarian efforts and ensure refugees a dignified return to their homes in Burma. The Rohingya have been in Bangladesh since 2017, fleeing a military genocide in Burma's Rakhine state. While many live in overcrowded camps, around 35,000 have been relocated to the nearby Basanchar island. Yunus, who assumed office on August 8th, emphasized restoring law and order is a priority and appealed for global support as Bangladesh transitions to a democratic future. Israeli military strikes intensified across Gaza on Tuesday, with deadly attacks reported in Rafah, Khan Yunis, and the Al Bureish camp. The Palestinian Health Ministry has confirmed 34 people were killed and 114 others injured in the last 24 hours alone. One of the deadliest incidents occurred at the Mustafa Hafiz school in Gaza City, where an Israeli strike killed 12 Palestinians, including children. The school, which was providing refuge to hundreds of displaced civilians, saw one of its buildings collapse, trapping and injuring many more. Eyewitnesses reported the scene as chaotic, with victims being rushed to Al-Ahli hospital for treatment. Meanwhile, the Israeli military claims to have recovered the bodies of 6 people previously taken prisoner by Hamas in Khan Yunis. As the families of other prisoners continue to demand a ceasefire, Israeli assaults can show no signs of abating. Israeli strikes in the past 10 months have killed 40,173 Palestinians and wounded 92,857 others. A report in the British medical journal The Lancet in July has estimated the death toll from Israel's war on Gaza could exceed 186,000. Despite international condemnation and a UN Security Council resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire, Israel continues its war on Gaza. The International Court of Justice has accused Israel of genocide, ordering an immediate halt to its military operations, yet the destruction and loss of life continue unabated. The Chinese government has sentenced 7 brothers from a prominent Uyghur family to prison terms between 9 and 17 years. The Abul Qasim brothers were active in construction and trade in Chinese-occupied eastern Turkistan, or Xinjiang. Chinese authorities detained them for charitable work and overseas activities that they deemed suspicious. Their sentences are part of a broader crackdown on Uyghurs by the Chinese government, with up to 1.8 million Uyghurs detained under pretexts of separatism and terrorism. Observers say the case highlights China's intensified repression of Uyghur culture and community support. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. Your support is needed now more than ever to continue our mission of providing informative, educational, and inspiring content to Muslims in North America and around the world. Donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.